Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Pathik Pandya's a Bij Chandra on Lord Shiva's Jata represents the time passed after evolution of universe. Islam also worships second phase of moon. Is there any similarity?
Well, I don't know. All I can say, I haven't. I don't want to comment on things that I don't know very well. But I do know that Said al-Andalusi, the Spanish, when Spain was Islamic, writing in 1068, he wrote a book on various sciences in various parts of the world. And he spoke briefly also about different regions that he was describing. And his chapter on India proclaimed that India was the world's #1 scientific nation at that point. So this is 1068 through his eyes, sitting in Spain. But he also said that and then he also had a chapter on Arabia. He said most Arabians were Sabians. And when he spoke about India, he said that most Indians were Sabians. So we don't quite know what to make of it. So the pre-Islamic Arabs, according to Said al-Andalusi, were Sabians. Maybe what he meant was that they worshipped in a similar way. And so there could be those connections, which I don't want to get into because it's a kind of a complicated topic. So let's just rest it there.
Okay. Aham Brahmasmi. Oh, that's a name. How much will it take to read the Vedas?
Well, Vedas are a huge amount of literature. You have the Vedic Samhitas, then you have the Brahman Granthas, that is. Then you have the Aranyakas, then you have the Upanishads, then you have the Sutras, then you have the Vedangas, then you have the Shastras. It's endless. It's huge. It all depends upon what is it that you want to know. If you want to know the very heart of what the Vedas are, you should start with the Upanishads. So read as many Upanishads you can, because basically it's not like you are doing a mathematics. You have to sort of soak it in your intuition. So you read lots of stuff, and these are very easy to read because the Upanishads are in terms of dialogues between a rishi and a student who comes and asks different questions. For example, what is death? What is this? Or how many gods? All kinds of such questions. Just read as many Upanishads in whatever translation, and keep the Sanskrit also in front of you, because the more you read it, you'll see that the Sanskrit is really quite similar to all of our Indian languages. So you'll also get to learn Sanskrit that way. So once you do that, then you will know which direction you want to go. Do you want to focus on sciences? Then you must read the darshanas. You read the corresponding sutras. For example, the Vaisheshika, if you want to know physics, or yoga, Yoga Sutra, if you want to know the inner self, right? Or Nyaya, or whatever else. So it depends, because everybody must choose. You must focus on one thing. Depending upon your temperament and what is it that you're seeking, then you will go along one pathway and then learn it. And as you learn it, you'll also learn the other things correspondingly, because as you deepen your understanding or intuition about one aspect, it will also make other aspects more accessible to you, easier for you to comprehend.
Right. Next question. How to revert? V. Garg is the person asking question. How to revert Sanatana into a missionary religion?
It should be a missionary religion. Let me tell you this. Supposing you saw a beautiful movie, wouldn't you want to tell every friend of yours that, hey, this movie is great, you must also watch it? Sanatan Dharma is such a beautiful thing. You must share it with everybody, not to put anybody down. You just tell them, hey, this is this wonderful stuff. Hey, why don't you find out for yourself? Because it'll change you, it'll transform you, it'll give you all the wonderful capacities that you didn't even know existed within you. So everybody should take this up. We should tell this wonderful thing, wonderful knowledge to everybody that we can, because this makes sense. It's like you read a great story, you want others also to read a great story. This is beautiful wisdom, you want others also to have this beautiful wisdom. So I don't think we should be shy of communicating it to others.
Right. And actually, about this being missionary, basically means that more people like you and me can continue communicating. Next question.
Does Celtic Ireland have any relation with Vedic Bharat? And which country is going back to pagan faith in Europe? Well, it's not that countries happen. Europe is, if you look at it at the individual level, there are different people with different views and opinions and ideas and churning going on. And there are many currents operating within Europe at this point. And there are, of course, those who want to go back to their pre-Christian divinities, but there are also the Veda itself is a very powerful thing. There are beautiful temples in every country, beautiful Hindu temples, that is, in every country of Europe. And there are wonderful acharyas who have set up their yogic schools. And then there are Europeans themselves who have their own ashrams. And there is Hare Krishna, which is a very, very powerful movement also. And they have their own acharyas. So there are so many different rivers, if you will, or streams, if you will. And in many ways, people don't want to be dominated by any single tradition. They want to be free. And that is what Sanatana Dharma is. Sanatana Dharma is the path of freedom. Sanatana Dharma is not a single ideology, because every human being in their life, depending upon what stage of their life every human being has a different understanding. So Sanatana Dharma is a tree which provides you the right understanding depending upon where you are in your life. As a boy or a girl, you have a certain understanding and you want to be told those stories which we have in Itihasas and the Puranas, right? As you grow older, then you have responsibilities of family, and then you go further, much older, you want to spread this knowledge as well. And ultimately, Sanatana Dharma is a way where everybody has a place, which respects everybody, which gives a room to everybody. And it's totally scientific. It's not against any of the sciences, because the outer sciences, the apara vidyas, are the foundation which is necessary for one to obtain paravidya, which is the Brahma Gyan, which is what we are looking for.
Right. There's a second part of the question. It says, which country is going back to pagan faith in Europe?
Well, in every European country, there is a movement. And in Lithuania, the parliament turned down a few months ago a bill which would have given Romuva official status, because there's also the traditionalists of the church were fighting it. And I think they needed 66% vote or something. It got a majority of vote, but it didn't cross the threshold that is required for it to obtain that official status. So they're still fighting to obtain official status. But maybe that official status doesn't really matter. This postmodern world, now official status was the time which was necessary where the church controlled everything, which is not the case anymore. And the church has huge problems as well in Europe.
Okay, right. Next one. Vinod Jan, please describe sun/river worship in different cultures.
Well, sun is a symbol for consciousness. In fact, sometimes we believe, and depends on the context, Surya and Vishnu, for example, are viewed as solar deities, right? But so is Shiva. Shiva is the sun, the sun within, the sun of consciousness. And what's interesting is, all of you know that normally when the sun sets in the west, you can see the moon in the east because the sun is illuminating the moon. The moon is generally opposite to the east, to the sun, right? That's what you can see. But on Shivaratri, the Shivaratri day, the next day, when the sun rises, you'll see the moon just above the crest of the sun, which is, Shiva's image as the face with the crest of the moon in his locks, right? So some of these images that are used in Sanatana Dharma have a astronomical basis. So the sun represents the worship of the inner sun and also the outer sun as representative of the moral order. Vishnu represents the outer sun and the moral order, and Shiva represents the inner sun and the consciousness principle. And river is, of course, the flow of the evolution or the unfolding of this reality. And if you are a part of that flow, that's when you have all the powers that you can get. So river represents, something much larger, of which we are only a small part.
Wonderful explanation. And next one, please. Bala Bolo
Is there DNA or any other evidence to suggest that life as humans started in India? Well, there are many different theories. The mainstream view is that Homo sapiens sapiens, which is humans in the form now, arose in Africa about 200,000 years ago. But there were other sapiens also in India, also in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, and or Neanderthals in Europe. And the belief now is that there is component of the other DNAs also in the modern humans. So there was a certain mixing taking place. But anyway, these are tentative theories. We don't know how much all of this will change. But I can tell you that in the Mahabharata and in Yoga Vasishta also, I've read it, it is stated that originally on earth, there were only giant creatures, and they called them asuras. And then all of them died millions of years ago. And then human beings arose. It's very amazing, very similar to what the general view is. But the Puranas also tell us that there are so many lokas. There are other solar systems which also have life. And this idea is sort of in consonance with this idea that maybe life in terms of DNA and molecules is present all over the universe, which is in modern science called the theory of panspermia. And through these, through asteroids and other processes, the whole universe gets seeded. So to come back to your question, we can't answer this. And scientifically, people believe that humans arose. I think it's called the multi-generation hypothesis, that humans or different pre-humans, which were almost like humans, arose in different parts of Earth. And then ultimately there was a mixing up, and that's what has led to the modern human.
All right. Okay. Next one.
Do Turks have any Vedic ancestry? Well, the Turks originally looked, the outer form like the Mongols. The Mongols and the Turks lived in northern Asia. And if you'll see pictures of Babur, for example, the first pictures, and there are some you can pull off the internet, you'll see that he looked almost like a Mongol, like what we might in common parlance call Chinese. So his eyes were like this. And then, of course, they intermarried within India, and they also intermarried in Central Asia. And as you know, Central Asia originally, until about 1500 years ago, was also in physiologically, they were Aryan-speaking people, and Aryans would be like Indians. They looked like Indians, and all the way to China, Khotanese. In fact, there was also Indian settlements there. But then later on, in the last 1500 years, there were these Turkic tribes. They came down, and then they conquered Central Asia. Then they intermarried with them and also conquered them. And slowly their languages became Turkic. Khotan, for example, had an Aryan language, and eventually it became a Turkic language, the Uyghur language. And most of the stans in Central Asia, excepting Tajikistan now, Tajikistan is still Persian, which is like Sanskrit, but the other stans are all Turkish. And then all the way to Azerbaijan from Atharva, the fire worshippers, Azerbaijan. So the Turks themselves, the Turkey originally was Greek speaking, so they've also Turkified. So what is modern Turkic is a admixture of many different peoples, but original Turks from Northern Asia look like Mongols.
Right. Next question, please.
Sir, your take on Professor G.N. Devi about language origin. I have no idea who Professor G.N. Devi is and what his theory is, so I cannot answer that. Okay, Ram is also another name for the divine fragment within us. Only when we become one with it is enlightenment possible. It's the real guru and guide. Sure, I mean, you can certainly say that, because ultimately the true guru is to be within us, because what somebody else tells you only can provide guidance. Whatever the guidance might be, eventually you must find sort of validation for it within yourself, the sakshi within you, because in many ways you are two selves. One is the emotional, mind-driven self, worried about this or that, but then there is also the dispassionate self within you, the sakshi, which of course is also mentioned in the Rig Vedic hymn as well. The two birds who are on a branch, and one of them eats the fruit, the other only watches. This is old Vedic idea that there is the true self, and the true self is your Atman, right? And that Atman provides you. Now, Atman doesn't speak, but through the Sakshi provides you guidance, and therefore Ram can be another name for that. Perfectly. I totally am in agreement with that.
Next question.
Okay, what is the significance of number 108 in Hinduism? Also, why is it so important number in Islam, Buddhism, Zen culture, in yoga? Okay, the number 108, as we know, is the distance that the sun and the moon have in their respective diameters away from the earth, and the diameter of the sun is about 108 times the diameter of the earth. These are wonderful coincidences, and because the outer is mirror in the inner, the Brahman and the Pind, so we visualize the inner sun, who is Atman or Paramatman or Krishna or Devi or Vishnu or Shiva, whatever, in your heart, to be 108 steps away, or 108 names of the god or the goddess away. So it's a part of the whole sadhana. Now, I don't know whether it is also worshipped. It's a critical number for the Muslims. I have no idea. But I do know that for a long time, the Christian rosary used to have 108 beads, but they have forgotten this deeper sense. And I think the Pope, I think in a order, 10, 15 years ago, has changed the number of beads to 116 or something.
Okay. Did Persian worship Ahura and abhorred?
Persians worship Ahura and abhorred Deva, where these gods reversed from that of Bharatvarsha. Well, if you go back to the Rig Veda, Asuras and the Devas are a pair. Varuna, for example, Mitra is an Asura also. So they are a pair. And Samudra Manthan, you need both the Asuras and the Devas. The Samudra Manthan takes place within each person, at the cosmic level also, but at each person, you need both. Now, as we know, If you read Mahabharata or Bhagavatam, you'll know that Krishna stopped the worship of Indra, right? So what happened at some point was that the earlier devas that were worshipped, the whole thing historically was turned around. So Indra is the lord of the senses. So in order, rather than just look at the worship of the senses within, you want to reach to the very heart of your being, who's Shiva or who's Krishna. So these are those switches that took place. And so Ahura or Ahura Mazda, which is Asura Medha, which is the power associated with discrimination, with Medha, was one way of making this switch. But we also know, like Buddha doesn't talk about the Atman, but we do know later on in Central Asia or in Southeast Asia, um, it was explicitly stated that you can either go up to Buddha to discrimination, or you go beyond it, which is Shiva. So Buddha and Shiva are two aspects of the truth. And likewise, the Zoroastrians themselves in Central Asia included Maheshwara. If you go back to Sogdians in Samarkand, and they were very powerful people for 1,000 years, and they worshipped Ahura Mazda, but they also tied up Ahura Mazda with Maheshwara, with Shiva. So a lot of the oppositions that you see written in textbooks is an attempt by Western scholars who are not understanding of the deeper meaning of getting caught up in the outer things. In Buddhology, Buddhologists are scholars who worked on the Buddha, who see, hey, now Buddhism and Hinduism are opposite. That's totally false. That's totally false. They don't get it, because any good scholar, as one whom I respect very much, Ananda Kumaraswamy, for example, he says the more you study Buddhism, you'll see that it's identical to Hinduism. There's really no difference at all. So, and Dalai Lama has said it on many occasions. Really, no difference between Buddhism and Hinduism. So I think this distinction is sort of communicated by people who don't truly understand the very heart of Ahura Mazda as well. It is one twist, so to speak, on this big river, which is the Veda.
And actually, you have written on it, and you said that Buddha avoided. He did not say that Atma does not exist. He simply avoided talking about Atma. And he talked about it only on his last day.
Only on his deathbed. And then he said, yes, there is something which is permanent. So Atman is right on his deathbed. And good Buddhist practitioners know it. That's why every good Buddhist practitioner would say, we are the same, which is what Dalai Lama has said on so many different occasions. And you go wherever, any discriminating Buddhist would say, yes, Buddhism is a part of Hinduism. But if they want to say we are different, that's fine too. We, as a big river, we don't mind what somebody else says, right? It's like the mother. A baby gets very upset, child gets upset and says, I hate you. The mother only smiles, right? That's what the Veda is.
That's right. Okay, that's a wonderful way of expressing it. Siddharth Mishra is the next question.
Once you said our universities should identify 100 texts and prepare curriculum accordingly. Should they be the Veda, Upanishad, Puran, Shastra? No, what I had said was not curriculum. What we need is a list of 100 great books. And certainly the Vedas and the Upanishads would also be a part of it. But other beautiful books of philosophy, history, and so on, and other shastras that have emerged in India and borderlands of India as well, because India was not just India. You go to Khotan, Central Asia, there are books written in Sanskrit there as well. Why should we not take them also a part of the larger river? So these should be easily available either on websites and certainly as printed books, so that if somebody wanted broad education in Indian tradition, they would know where to start. See, right now, they would go to Sanjay ji, you, or they will come to me or somebody else and say, okay, what do I read now? What do I read next? What do I read next? Now, we don't need to do that for the Western civilization, because there are these 100 great books of Western civilization that have been printed, I think, by Britannica, by others. So, every young person knows where to go. We haven't done that. I'm not saying that we need to make this a part of the formal curriculum in school or colleges, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be learned otherwise. But we should have these a list drawn up, and including some of the modern books, maybe even some books by Premchand or by other great authors from south of India or from Bengal or others, some books to the modern era as well, because we shouldn't be only reading the ancient texts, we should also be reading modern texts. And so this needs to be done. In my view, this is a big task that needs to be taken up right away, and not to shove it down people's throats. No, as a list, every library of a college should have these 100 great books, so that young people can go and find out easily what to read.
Do you have such a list?
I haven't drawn up a list of 100, but maybe I should also work on it. I shouldn't be talking and giving advice. I should be doing this myself.
Okay, look forward to it. Okay, next question, Pathik Pandya.
Okay, Pratik Pandya, why our rich temples are not using their wealth to promote Hinduism? We keep complaining about rice bag conversion, but should we look within ourselves? Very good point, Pratik. I totally agree with you. This is what our temples should be doing. This is what our temples used to do before the English dismantled the education. Not all temples used to do it, but many temples, some of the great acharyas, were connected with the temples. Temples were living institutions of knowledge. But the English destroyed that system. They dismantled those pathshalas. They took away independence, autonomy of those temples. Now these temples are run by government officers. I think this is one of the most tragic and sad things that has happened. We meaning the general population, needs to take back control of these temples, and the temples which are free, because in the south they're almost totally run by the government, but in the north there are some which are free, but they also need to be inspired to bring in the knowledge part into it. And certainly temples overseas in Europe and America should also get into it. I think some pushing needs to be done to give prerana to these managers, that look, you have to have some way, and maybe given with technology, we could even have some kind of a accrediting board, so that these temples together could also then have a system where young people and others who are so inclined can get education and mentorship and obtain degrees of certification. And if the certification is good, they will be accepted by everybody. I think we need a revolution in the way temples are run.
Right. Ajay Sharma is next. DNA studies have found migrations happened from India to Europe. Could this be the reason for similarities between pre-Christian Euro religions and Sanatana Dharma?
It's quite possible that this has happened to a certain extent. We do know that India was the most densely populated region in the ancient world. And we also know that the modern European languages entered Europe only about 2000 BC. Prior to that, they were non-European languages, like the Basque or like the Finnish or the Etruscan. These are not modern Indo-European languages. So European languages entered Europe rather late. Now, one might ask, where did they originate? Now, of course, there are many linguists who say that maybe they originated in Central Asian plains. But it's also possible, at least from my own perspective, as someone who knows many of the languages which are used in Central Asia, for example, Kashmiri and all the Pahari languages, or Khotanese or Sogdian and so on, and Persian and Avestan, it's possible that the origin was closer to this region, to northwest India. rather than Central Asia. I tend to feel that this is where it was, because here you also see both the Satum and Kentum divide. You find Kentum, where the 100 has a, instead of Shat, you have Kent. There's an N between the first sound and the second sound, right? There's an N. And Western European languages have that, but Pahari languages also, some Pahari languages also have that. So it's quite possible that this was this central place, but that doesn't really matter. I don't think one should become chauvinistic about it, wherever it might be. But it does appear that there was a movement, because we also see Slavic languages influenced by languages to the east. The word Maidan we already mentioned. It's also it's a Persian word, but it's also a word in Pahari, in Kashmiri, in all the Pahari languages. We have this word. So this we see a lot in Western languages, also mirrored in the languages from this region. So it's possible that people moved in that direction, but there was also not just movement of people, there were also people already in Europe. There's also a mixing up of cultures. And then there were also missionaries, which went certainly from India in different directions.
Okay, then next question. This is a short one. Please tell best summary of Vedas written in English.
Well, a book by Sri Aurobindo called The Secret of the Veda. He wrote it about 100 years ago. That was the first challenge to the superficial translations to the Vedas that we find, and which are on the internet, but they're very, very bad, like Griffiths or Max Muller didn't translate. He only edited, but some of his stuff was also translated. It's very, very superficial. So if you can get hold of that, and it is freely available on the internet, but Sri Aurobindo's style was very difficult. His sentences sometimes run into more than one page. It's the same sentence. So it's very difficult to read Sri Aurobindo. Or you could, I've written some stuff on the Medium. In fact, one of those essays is called The Secret of the Veda. But certainly to know the Veda, you have to go through the Upanishads. You have to, soak the Upanishads in. And once you do that, then it becomes easier. Then you become strengthened, so to speak, to go to the Vedas. And at some point, if you really get to love it and you get to know the language, then you can go to the Sanskrit originals. Then you'll realize how it'll give you newer and deeper meanings.
Right. Okay, the next one, Deependra, are there any similarities between Sanatana Dharma and
European? Of course, when the Greeks came to India, Alexander, right, 320 BC or thereabouts, and then Megasthenes wrote a book on India. It's called Indica. In Greek. Not all of it is available, but whatever is available has been translated. So what Megasthenes said, he says, look, we've come to India. India's religion is not really all that different from our own religion, because in India they worship two gods, Apollo and Dionysus. By Apollo, he meant Krishna. And by Dionysus, he meant Shiva. So, and then they had the goddess Athena, and you have the goddess here. So in some sense, there was this correspondence which ancient travelers saw when they went from one region to another. They said, well, maybe they're using different names, but the meaning is the same. And the meaning is, of course, provided. Now, it is possible that in certain cultures, ancient European societies, they were more attached to the names. Sanatana Dharma is not about names. Sanatana Dharma is about Paravidya. These names are a part of your acculturation for preparation to receive Paravidya. Paravidya is beyond names. It's Nirgun, it's not Sagun, it's Nirgun. So ultimately, Sanatana Dharma is preparation to go beyond all gunas into the Nirgun understanding of reality. And it's quite possible that this was known in this clarity only within the Indian tradition. And it's possible that the Europeans did not know that deeper meaning.
As the famous Rudrashtak in Ramcharitmanas, Nijam Nirgunam Nirvikalpam Niriham Chidakash Makash Vasam Bhajeham.
Right.
Next one.
May Lord Krishna be the charioteer of all our endeavors. Dhanyosmi. Absolutely. Lord Krishna, I think, one of the most powerful forces in Europe is really the Hare Krishna movement. And and so Krishna has become a charioteer, because what has happened is, 100 years ago, you had Swami Vivekananda come to America and to Europe, and these Vedanta centers were set up. But these were more about philosophical discussion, because you also need bhakti ultimately. See, so there was philosophical discussion. There are lots of intellectuals who would come and assemble, and there were certain temples and so on, and people did their own sadhana. So that is wonderful. But you needed bhakti. And what Hare Krishna movement has done has brought that bhakti, which has really gotten people committed in a very total way to pushing it. So from that perspective, I think now some people say that they're so one pointed in the way they do their bhakti, but that's perfectly fine. Now, I may not do it that way, but I think what they're doing is they're making that path accessible to more and more people, and they are strong in Russia, in East Europe, in Western Europe, in Australia, whichever country you go, you find that Hare Krishna are doing wonderful work.
Okay, the next one is Bhaktadas. Similarities between Krishna and Christ, meaning of name, places where they pay and stayed. I was wondering if they have been seeking or worshipping Bhagwan Krishna in a deformed path.
A wonderful question. In the 19th century, there were certain Western Indologists who said that, look, the word Krishna and Christ, Christos, are very similar. So maybe Krishna was taken from Europe, and so Krishna worship is really Christianity. So people started writing books, and then for this line of inquiry, something terrible happened. They discovered this column, I think it's near Vidisha, by Heliodorus, who was a Greek Bhagavata, Greek Krishna worshipper, dated to 150 BCE, where Heliodorus column, he worships Krishna. And then they realized if it couldn't have been Christos to Krishna, because this is before Christos. And then they were too terrified to suggest that Christos was from Krishna. Because if you abandon the first, then you must investigate the second. So they were too terrified to investigate that.
All right. Okay. Next one. Ajit Bantla. I hear you have been started visiting Hindu religious places like Varanasi to discover spirituality, because it has been completely wiped off in Europe.
Yeah, I think why there is a lot of unhappiness is that the church provides you a certain fellowship, which is a good thing. You go to the church and the minister gives you a homily or a lecture, which is a good thing, but doesn't address this question of the mystery. It's more it's more like a lecture. So this is what people have been missing in Western religion, and which is why a lot of people now, of course, Western religion did things. They send these monks and nuns go out into different places and become doctors and nurses, but and that was the good social aspect of it. But there was not the aspect related to the mystery, to the spirit, to jnana, to gnosis, to knowledge. And so I think if I were to step back for a moment, I think what was lacking for some time in certainly Hinduism of the past 100 years after the coming of the British was Sangha. Buddha identified it very well. He said, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, which is Dharma, and then Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. The general Sanatan Dharma did not have a Sangha. And that was something which was missing. And so what Sanatana Dharma has needed to do is to bring in this Sangha. And while what Western religion did not have was this Dharma and Gyan, which is why they come to Varanasi, right? They get connected to this deep spirituality, deep sense of one with the cosmos, which you have when people bathe in Ganga, or when they go to Kumbh Mela, right? In Ganga again, in Prayagraj or in Haridwar. It's that connection which gives you that comfort, that while you are alone in Kumbh Mela, you are not alone, you are a part of the whole cosmos, right? Which is comforting, which is counterintuitive, but that is beautiful.
Quite right. Quite right. That is also this counter view that one of the main reasons why Sanatana Dharma survived was because of its decentralized character. And Buddhism was run over within no time because of its centralized character.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Sanatana Dharma, maybe they had this deeper foreknowledge that it was totally decentralized. It was within everybody's heart. So that's why it was protected. They couldn't kill people. Now, this question, Vikram Razdan, agnostic Christians in UK are interested in Sanatana Dharma, but unable to understand the philosophy because of lack of Hindu cultural connectivity. You're absolutely right. In fact, any thoughtful person, if they were to think about what makes sense, would realize that Sanatana Dharma is universal, it's beautiful, it's comforting, it doesn't even ask you to believe in this or that. You can, it is this large current. In fact, I read a tweet today by Sankran Sanu, who in about 15-16 years ago, there was this on Encarta encyclopedia, there was this essay on Hinduism, which was so stupid, by a well-known Western professor of religion. And then Sankran Sanu did he protested, and they finally let him write this essay on Hinduism. This is many years ago. He wrote a wonderful essay, even though he's a technologist, as we know. And then in this tweet, he says, after he was writing, going back and forth with the editor of Encarta, the editor of Encarta finally said, well, if this is what Hinduism is, I'm a Hindu. Anybody who knows what Hinduism is they would say we are a Hindu. The problem with all of what's been going on in Indian education and writing about India or Bollywood is that people don't want what Hinduism is to be known to the larger world. They are saying this is what Hinduism is. They call it all names because they are afraid that the truth of Hinduism, the truth of Sanatana Dharma will come out, and everybody would say, we love it. This is we believe in it too, truly. Because I think what the question was, I totally agree. We need to work harder, and with technology and with Jaipur dialogues of Sanjay Dixit ji, maybe this is the medium through which others will know what the true face of Sanatana Dharma is. It doesn't hate anybody. It's this receptacle of love. It's a spring of love, totally consistent with science, and totally devoted and equal for every human being. Men and women are totally equal because the same Shiva or Krishna resides within one's heart, and everybody has access to the same knowledge.
Oh, wonderfully expressed, Professor Kak. This is the last question we have. Veda, the Indic language, always had Brahman as people, not Brahmin. Is it a foreign English language invention?
No, the word Brahman means Brahma. Brahma means the whole cosmos. Brahman is somebody who is devoted or dedicated in the Varna, not in the jati sense. The Varna is, and Brahman is within each one of us also. With each one of us is the same Purusha, and the Purusha has 4 Varnas associated with him. With him, Purusha doesn't have any gender. It is neuter gender. But Brahma has no gender. So Brahman as that Varna is a class of people who are dedicated to propagating this knowledge. But anybody can be a Brahman. Anybody.
Quite right. So that brings us to the end of this show. Thank you very much, Professor Kak, and thank you very much, viewers. And with that, we end the show, and good luck to all of you. Jai Hind.
Thank you,
Vande Mataram.
Sanjay ji. Thank you, Sanjay ji. Wonderful.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.